The night the earth shook. I still remember the screams, not the kind you hear during a festival or when kids play too rough. These were deep, guttural cries that seemed to rip through the night. It was the kind of sound that made your skin crawl, like the earth itself was mourning. That was the night everything changed for our village, the night the brother and sister were caught. Our village was small, tucked away in a valley surrounded by thick forests and rolling hills. Life was simple but hard. We grew our own food, fetched water from the river, and relied on each other for everything. Everyone knew everyone. Secrets were rare, and when they did surface, they spread like wildfire. Amina and Kofi were siblings, born into a family that was respected but not particularly wealthy. Their father, Kwame, was a farmer, and their mother, Adwoa, was known for her skill in weaving baskets. They had 3 other children, all younger than Amina and Kofi. The family was ordinary, unremarkable in many ways, until the unthinkable happened. Amina was the eldest, and she had always been different. She was beautiful, with sharp features and a confidence that made people notice her. But there was something about her that made others uneasy. She had a way of looking at you, like she could see right through you. And she was clever. Too clever, some said. She could talk her way out of trouble, convince anyone to do anything. Kofi, on the other hand, was the opposite. He was quiet, almost shy. He had a kind heart and was always willing to help others. If you needed someone to fix your fence or carry your yams, Kofi was the one you called. He was well liked in the village, though some thought he was too soft, too easily influenced. The 2 of them were close, but no one thought much of it. Siblings are supposed to be close, right? They worked together in the fields, fetched water together, and often sat by the fire at night talking and laughing. But then the whispers started. At first it was just little things. Old Mama Nkrumah, who lived at the edge of the village, said she saw them walking too close together in the fields. Their hands were almost touching, she muttered to anyone who would listen. Then there was Kwaku, the blacksmith, who claimed he saw them laughing in a way that felt off. It wasn't normal, he said. It was like they were sharing a secret, something no one else could understand. I didn't want to believe it. No one did. What they were accused of was unthinkable. In our village, such things weren't just wrong, they were a curse. Our ancestors had strict rules about family, about bloodlines. To break those rules was to invite disaster, not just for the individuals involved, but for the entire community. But the whispers grew louder. People started avoiding Amina and Kofi. Mothers pulled their children away when they walked by. Even their own family seemed uneasy around them. Their parents, Kwame and Adwoa, tried to brush it off. People talk, Kwame said. They have nothing better to do. But Adwoa looked worried. She had always been a woman of few words, but her eyes spoke volumes. Then came the night that changed everything. It was during the dry season when the air was hot and heavy and the nights were long. The village was preparing for the annual harvest festival, a time of celebration and gratitude. But there was a tension in the air, like a storm brewing on the horizon. That evening, the elders called a meeting. The entire village gathered around the big baobab tree, the one where we held all our important discussions. The fire in the centre cast flickering shadows on the faces of the crowd. Amina and Kofi were brought forward. At first they denied it. Amina stood tall, her chin lifted in defiance. "These are lies," she said, her voice steady. "People are jealous of our family. They want to see us fall." But the elders weren't convinced. They had heard too much, seen too much. They pressed harder, asking questions that made the crowd shift uncomfortably. Kofi broke down first. He cried like a child, his shoulders shaking as he confessed. "I didn't want to," he sobbed. "She made me. She said it was our secret that no one would ever know." The crowd gasped. Amina's face hardened, but she didn't say a word. She just stood there, her eyes cold and unreadable. The elders didn't take long to decide. What they'd done was a violation of everything we believed in. It wasn't just about them. It was about the entire family. Their parents, their younger siblings, even their grandparents, all of them were tainted by this sin. By sunrise, the family was gone. Their huts were burned to the ground, and they were banished from the village. No one was allowed to speak to them or help them. They just disappeared. For weeks after, the village was quiet. No one wanted to talk about what happened. But you could feel it, like a shadow hanging over us. Every time I passed the empty space where their huts used to be, I'd think about Kofi's face that night. The way he looked at Amina, like he hated her but couldn't let her go. I don't know where they are now. Sometimes I wonder if they're still together, if they regret what they did, or if they've moved on, pretending it never happened. But I know one thing for sure. That night, the earth shook, and nothing was ever the same again. The aftermath. The days that followed the banishment were strange. The village felt hollow, like a tree that had been stripped of its leaves. The harvest festival, which was supposed to be a time of joy and celebration, was cancelled. No one had the heart to dance or sing. The drums stayed silent, and the fires remained unlit. The elders tried to restore order. They called another meeting under the baobab tree, this time to remind everyone of the importance of our traditions. "What happened was a tragedy," Elder Mensah said, his voice heavy with sorrow. "But we must remember who we are. We are a people of honor, of respect. We cannot let this break us." But his words did little to ease the tension. People were angry, not just at Amina and Kofi, but at themselves. How had this happened? How had we not seen the signs? Mothers began to watch their children more closely, especially their sons and daughters. Brothers and sisters who once walked hand in hand now kept their distance. Even close friends became wary of each other. The family's absence was felt everywhere. Their huts, now reduced to ashes, left a gaping hole in the center of the village. The space where they once lived became a place of shame, a reminder of what had gone wrong. People avoided it, walking around it as if it were cursed. Kwame and Adwoa's younger children, Ama, Yor and Ifia, had been taken in by distant relatives in another village. No one spoke of them, but I often wondered how they were doing. Ama was only 10, Yor 8, and Ifia just 6. They were innocent, caught in the crossfire of their older siblings' mistakes. As for Amina and Kofi, no one knew where they had gone. Some said they had fled into the forest, where they would either survive or perish. Others claimed they had been seen wandering near the river, their faces gaunt and their clothes torn. A few even whispered that they had been captured by a rival tribe and sold into slavery. But the truth was, no one really knew. And perhaps that was the hardest part, the not knowing. It left room for imagination, for fear. Every rustle in the bushes, every shadow in the night, made people wonder if it was them, if they had come back to seek revenge or beg for forgiveness. The guilt. As time passed, the initial shock began to fade, but the guilt remained. It was like a wound that wouldn't heal, festering beneath the surface. People started to question the elders' decision. Had banishment been the right punishment? Had we been too harsh? Nia, Amina's best friend, was especially haunted. She was the one who had told the elders about Amina's confession, and while everyone praised her for doing the right thing, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had betrayed her friend. One night I found her sitting by the river staring into the water. Her eyes were red and her hands trembled. "I didn't want this to happen," she whispered. "I thought they would be punished, but I didn't think it would end like this." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to tell her she had done the right thing, but another part of me wondered if she had. Had revealing the truth really made things better, or had it only made everything worse? Even the elders seemed unsure. I overheard Elder Mensah talking to Elder Akua one evening. "Perhaps we acted too quickly," he said, his voice low. "Perhaps we should have given them a chance to repent, to make amends." But Elder Akua shook her head. No, she said firmly. We did what we had to do. If we had shown mercy, it would have set a dangerous precedent. Our traditions are what hold us together. Without them, we are nothing. The memories. Months turned into years, but the memory of that night never faded. It became a story, a cautionary tale told to children to remind them of the importance of family and tradition. Remember Amina and Kofi, parents would say. Remember what happens when you stray from the path. But for those of us who had lived through it, the story was more than just a lesson. It was a wound, a scar that would never fully heal. Every time I passed the baobab tree, I could still hear Kofi's cries, still see the look of defiance on Amina's face. I often wondered about them. Were they still together? Had they found a way to start over, to build a new life somewhere far away? Or had their guilt consumed them, driving them apart or worse? One day, a traveller came to the village. He was a trader from the north, and he brought with him stories of distant lands. As we gathered around to listen, he mentioned a couple he had met in a village near the mountains. They were strange, he said. The woman was beautiful but cold, and the man seemed broken. They kept to themselves, never speaking to anyone, but the villagers said they had come from the south, fleeing some great shame. My heart raced. Could it be them? I wanted to ask more, but the trader had already moved on to another story. The legacy. Years later, the village began to heal. The empty space where Amina and Kofi's family had lived was filled with new huts, and the baobab tree became a place of gathering once again. But the story of that night remained, passed down from generation to generation. For me, it was a reminder of how fragile life is, how easily things can fall apart. It taught me the importance of balance, between tradition and compassion, between justice and mercy. But most of all, it taught me about the power of secrets. Secrets can destroy, but they can also protect. Sometimes the truth is too heavy to bear, and the best thing we can do is let it rest. As for Amina and Kofi, I like to think they found peace. Maybe they learned from their mistakes. Maybe they didn't. But wherever they are, I hope they know that they are not forgotten. Because that night, the earth shook, and nothing was ever the same again.